Morning, everybody. Today is Friday, August 25th, 2023. This is a session of equipment design peer review panel. We have a couple of projects to review today, but before we do that, we would like to review and approve the minutes from our last meeting, July 28th. Do I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes? Yes, Mark? A motion. Thank you. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you, Norm. Everybody in agreement? Yes? Yes. Yeah. Anybody opposed? Approve the minutes. Well, yeah, would you please tell us about the first project?
Sure, yes, and good morning, everybody. The first project we'll review this morning is the Circuit Trail connector, or the School Plaza Overlook at the southern terminus of the Katy Trail. The panel reviewed the Highline connector, the 1 mile link between the Katy Trail and the Trinity Strand Trail in 2019. However, substantial improvements to the design of the plaza have been made, so components of the connector are back for review this morning. Design considerations for the plaza include the preservation of existing trees, integration of public art and shade, signage, a basic strategy to minimize interruption to the Katy Trail during construction, and the opportunity to envision a future connection to the neighboring Little Mexico community, Larry Hines, and Harwood District. So with all that, I'll hand it off to Phil with Circuit Trail Conservancy to provide additional information and introduce the design team.
Cool. Michael and I need to excuse ourselves from this.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Morning, everybody. As mentioned, I'm Phil Pike. I'm the executive director of the Dallas Community TBA last year. So Circuit Trail Conservancy, what we first came here as in 20, I think it started this process in 2019 with planning and urban design. And just to give you a brief update, so that original application for a typical board was successful. The city council approved that, with the great partnership from planning, urban design, and economic development. And so the Highline portion of that project, the trail that was reviewed by this panel twice in 2020, is now under construction. So if you were to go out there today, from the Katy Trail all the way to the Trinity Strand Trail, it is about 2/3 of the way completed. That project ended up being, at this point, we're at 13 million for 1 mile. And that's because we are really reorienting the street from that vehicular use to bike and pedestrian safety and connectivity. And as you know, that's a really built out area, has a lot of infrastructure that we needed to reorient to make it safe for pedestrians, which led to the need of this particular project. This is one that we have not really gone public with previously, because back in 2020, when we were first going through this process, we came up with some preliminary designs that were brought to y'all, but really we didn't have secured funding for, and the focus on, at the time, was on the Highline project because there were federal funds associated with that project as well. We wanted to get that one out the door and get it under construction. And then it would give everyone time to, really develop this in a manner that we thought was appropriate for the area, given the investment the city has made and the private owners in Victory and on the Katy Trail. And it also allowed us to use a design team that we thought would be up to handling this, this really complicated connection. It's in a very small area. Just a quick step back for those of you who aren't super familiar. The Loop Dallas is a public-private partnership with the city. We have a development agreement with the Parks Department for 4 new trails. This is kind of our bullet points for all that. So we're building 11 new miles of trail to connect into 39 miles of existing trail, and that makes a 50-mile loop around the core of Dallas. To date, we have 2 projects that are under construction and 3 more that are getting ready to go out the door. We have $90 million secured for those, and those are all fully funded. There are 2 missing links that we're going to be working on over the next 2 years to get it's mainly the Trinity Forest Spine Trail that has that gap, because of the fact that is a 9-mile trail from White Rock Lake all the way down to the Trinity Forest. So we're working through all those, but all the right-of-way issues have been resolved, and so it's really just a matter of design and funding that will get those completed. So we're looking at a really positive outlook because this project has been underway for a while, the loop in general. And so we are anticipating everything will be open by 2027. So yeah, that's coming up fast. And then we went through a design competition, but we went through and vetted some different firms, and TVG was selected. This is the first project that we've worked with TVG on, but we really think that they have come and met this task or this challenge and really presented the best design possible. One of the things, and I'll let them go into the design, but one of the things that we worked on with our late board member Philip Henderson was understanding how to accomplish this connection. Because really what you're looking at is that today, if you were to stand in Victory and look towards the Katy Trail, it's a 12-foot retaining wall. And I think you have some existing imagery of that. And so we had to figure out, well, if you're coming from uptown down the Katy Trail and you want to get onto the Highline projects, how do you come down to grade 12 feet without having to, with this limited space, this constrained, property that is only about 40 feet wide. And so it's within the city limits, or the city right of way. And so TVG came up with this idea. We knew that the flow was going to come down from the Katy Trail and take that right. That if you were at the American Airlines Center or in Victory and you're wanting to get on the High Line, you wouldn't necessarily go back up the Katy Trail. You would stay at grade and take the High Line and take the left. And so really that's the only, that was the only real movement that we thought was necessary to come down to grade that ramp. And then I'll let you go. You're going to introduce Mark. Okay. And then this is Mark Meyer. Maybe you've heard of him. And I'll let him go into the design process. But we're super excited. This project is fully funded. And so we are ready to, once this design gets to 100%, we will be ready to go out. This is unlike our other projects in that we are privately funding the construction. Per the TIF award that we have with economic development, we secured a loan from a bank, a construction loan, and then we also had a private donor come in and fill the gap to make sure that we had the funds necessary for this project. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, Will. I'm just going to give a little bit of an overview. Jody House is our principal in charge of this. Is actually a girls' weekend, so she would be the one doing this, but I'm filling in for her. Just so you guys know, Stephanie Lynn is our project manager. She'll be speaking, and Natalie Campbell is our technical designer on this. So I'm just going to give a little bit of an overview, and Phil really sort of talked quite a bit about that, so it'll be brief. I think there's a couple things that are really unique about this site. One is the location and connectivity. So just so we make sure everybody knows where it is, it's obviously the connection to the Highline Trail that's under construction right now that will meet the basically Katy Trail at the intersection of Houston and Victory in the middle of the American Airlines Center in the Victory District. There are a lot of complications with this project. Maybe this is easier for you guys to see. A lot of complications with this project. As Philip has said, we are very narrow 40-foot right of way, and we've got plus or minus anywhere between 12 and 14 feet of grade that we have to mitigate. One of the really big sort of goals that the foundation has is to make sure that there is a seamless connection between both the Highline Trail that is being done and that of the Katy Trail. And that's actually a really hard thing when you think you're such a narrow corridor with so much grade that you're having to mitigate. Also, there's a lot of what I call urban amenities. If we didn't have them, probably wouldn't live here, such as storm water, storm sewer, traffic lights that are all within this area. So even though it looks like there's a vertical difference, there's many things that are underneath the ground that we're also having to work with through. This area also, if you see it here, there's a drainage basin. This collects all the water that is coming off from the Dallas Housing Authority property. Right here, it's a huge watershed. It's one of the things that we're working on right now with our civil engineer to understand that. So when it rains, all the water that's coming off of that hillside is going to this point, and then it goes down into the city system right here. And then lastly, I think one of the biggest things that we've talked about from a goal standpoint is let nature be nature. That's really important to the Katy Trail. It is one of the most natural, sort of urban natural spots that we have that goes through our city, probably similar to White Rock Lake when people go there to experience that. So one of the driving reinforcements is trying to be as careful as possible to, if we take away nature, because there is a big connection here, that we bring it back and long-term we establish that it has a similar feel and character to nature being there. With that, also the ecology of the site is very interesting. So not many people know, but the Balcones Fault that comes up from Austin actually comes all the way through the west side of Dallas, and it comes all the way up to this site. If you've been on the Katy Trail and as you turn to make your way to the Victory District, one of the things that you'll notice is all of a sudden it looks like there's this white, yellow, brown limestone that's on your left-hand side right there. That is really the last piece of the Balcones Fault that comes actually up through that area. So this context of understanding the natural ecology right there has been very important to our design and what the team is trying to do from that aspect of trying to either engage that or recreate that so we don't lose that aspect of what was there in that area. From that, I'm going to let Tiffany come up and really just talk about the concept itself, which is right forward. Get that to you.
So I want to start by talking about our design process. This came from 2 iterations. One of them was trying to study the plaza as a lower level that connects to the street and that relationship. And then another concept that was really strong for us was an overlook. So where people would collect at the upper level. So as you can see that we've merged those 2 iterations with a lower deck, an upper deck, and then an overlook off to the side. So our final concept bridges the 2 together, and as you can see here, the circulation is that it's connected to Victory Avenue, and then you go up the ramp or down the ramp, and then through the bridge, and then you situate yourself at the overlook, which is tucked away in the woods. As Mark was emphasizing, we really wanted our users to be within nature, tucked away in there. In the Overlook Plaza, it's within the woods, and it's also going to be within the art installation, which is symbolized in these 3 asterisks, concepts that we don't really know just yet. And we really want this space to be somewhere where people can rest and enjoy this view that is centered on Victory. And hopefully in the future, as you can see here, we would hope that it can provide a connection up to the DHA. And we get the second word to that clearly emphasizes the circulation plan. So right here just highlights the ground circulation, the bridge and the Katy Trail in the pink, and then this the ramp circulation that goes down or up and then through Victory to the loop. With that, I'll take it to Natalie for more of the technicals.
So with the need of circulation plan to make it a lot clearer, you can tell that there's a lot of overlapping circulation. And from a simple plan, it's really difficult to tell what's going on. So sections and perspectives were really critical for our team to communicate about the design, but also to communicate with our other consultants. So our sections are really, really helpful to talk to our structural design team a lot. So we've been using these. We have 4 primary cuts that we come through, but these are 2 really helpful ones of our overall 4. So our top section is cutting through one of our more, cutting through to the left, where we're still at grade and no longer, we don't currently have a bridge condition, but we do have an overhang. So you can see that we've had to raise up to keep that bridge circulation, have a clear enough overhead for underneath. So we've had to raise some of the existing grade, and also to keep the Katy Trail's integrity in the field. So we've raised it up from the existing grade and that downhill slope that Mark was talking about in our existing conditions. And that's where we start our separation of space up here for the Katy Trail. And it's kind of encapsulated and designated with our custom railways or our handrails that we've, you can see in some of our renderings. We're really trying to highlight and emphasize the bridge itself with these handrails and really make it an iconic view and look. And so this is one of the ways that we're really framing this space, and highlighting that this is an important space and a space for surfing and looking, and respite. And then down below, this is the ramp condition, so the circulation, that'll be the blue, trail that intertwines, between our street level and our bridge level, and that's also going to drop down, then to our lower plaza. So you can kind of see those conditions really clearly here. The sections really help a lot to start understanding those spaces. And then down below, you can see where this is the bridge condition. We're no longer touching grade, and it's elevated in a big structural, big deal. That's where structure comes into play. And then it's also cutting through our plaza that's elevated. So that plaza initially is at grade on plan right? And then as it scoots across towards the bridge, there are some parts that are elevated, and we've got these really great benches that we're coordinating with a vendor to look at making something that is a great spot for respite and stopping and looking, talking, any of those things, and also give something that is just really drawing you in. So you can kind of see cutting through a couple of those bench spots. And then once again, through the bridge and the walk and biking trail, we've tried to make that wide enough where you have a spot for stopping, a spot for walking, or stopping and looking over the bridge, and also for your typical bike traffic as well. Below, you can see we've cut through a couple of retaining wall situations that's in more north on the plan. So trying to not have that big 12-foot retaining wall that just really dwarfs people, start to get down to the human scale by breaking that up, and finding a spot to punch through and see the nature, see the vegetation and those things on the hillside. And then we've got our bike trail, again, that's still the blue. And then dropping back down to the plaza space. So that's our sections. Those. And then for our perspectives, it just gives a really good look. So we've been using these a lot for discussions, design discussions amongst each other to better understand walls and the relationships they play, and also really accommodating for bike traffic and those needs that come with that. So this is looking from Victory, a little bit bird's eye. Head on to the site, you can just really see what impact it can make at the end of this vantage point. Currently, we have our placeholders in there, those big cylinders, to further progress the discussions of what that art could be, and what kind of impact we can make with those things, while also really showing that the bridge makes a big impact all by itself, which is really great. We're excited to look at how we're going to light and emphasize those things. We're also working with fabricators to really figure out the best way to achieve some of these iconic looks and feels. You can also kind of see the wall, the donor opportunities, and you can kind of see those three different tiers moving out to circulation in here. And then your top plaza, this gives a really good look at the top plaza. And where we're really trying to put a big impact, and this is our spot for respite and stop for, you can pull aside your bike, you can sit and rest for a second, you can stop and look over the edge of the railing, you can offer just a lot of opportunities for sitting and social opportunities amongst here. You can see how the rails really define this space, but we've also defined it with enhanced paving to really make it known and obvious that this is a really good spot. You can also see some of the relationship with down below and how our materials are kind of tie in, and how we're going to try and keep a relationship with those. But this is going to be a really impactful spot for stopping. And last one is our view from below, where you can kind of see the connections on the street and how that still keeps the integrity of the circulation, and also is going to tie into the streetscape work that Phil talked about that's being done by SWA. So we're still going to be tying into those and keeping that circulation really strong, but also offering an opportunity to maybe slow down traffic a little bit so that in the space itself for bike traffic to let them come through and circulate, but stop and make choices which direction they're going to head, whether it's in or other directions through. You can kind of see that it's just an improved streetscape down here, that offers a lot of connectivity up to the plaza or anywhere on the streetscape thing. So that is. So I'll give it back to Mark. Thumbs up.
Yeah, with that, questions related to the design that we've helped answer or comments or critique?
That's right. Questions from the panel, the design, anybody?
I have
Clarifications.
one or two, if I might.
As you always do.
And I always see, I always have comments. But, so if I understand it, if you're up here, and I excuse you, my lady, if you're on the high part of the trail, the only way down to the street level is this. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, if you look at that, you're correct. There is the ramp that goes down that's PDA accessible.
Okay.
That comes down through there. That's shown as the blue line that's on here. And just also as you go about 800 feet further is where the proper Katy Trail meets grade into the street that goes to the American
Okay,
Airways.
so you either one of those two locations.
Yes.
You can wind, okay, that's.
And if you see this sidewalk that's coming back here, this is an existing sidewalk
Okay,
that is actually going to the north. That
okay,
meets grade. That's right. Yeah, so in totality of this section along the street, you'll have three accessible points.
okay. And where are we have to ask this every time, where are we in design? Just real? I
Yes,
see handrails and textures and things, those are not just like.
we are in design development.
Okay,
And it has been proved by our civil and our structural engineer that this is completely capable.
okay, and I'm tempted to ask a question, I never do, and I'm not done because I have lots of colleagues who are better than this. But I would love, you began, maybe I'll say this, you began the discussion, referring about all that water coming down that starts right there. How are we, and I see buildups, I see flat spots, I see lots of fill. And so it's not going where it used to go. How are we handling that?
That's right. There is, working with our civil engineer, let me see, maybe this is. I think that's perfectly fine. You should ask, because it is a big piece of this design.
I'm still investigating by the thunder.
So basically, right in this area, where where the existing drainage basin is right now. The way this land has been built when the Katy Trail was placed here, water would flow this way and would flow that way to that one basin.
Okay,
Because we're raising the trail, you see that wall there, and then there'll be one here, and then this cuts through here. We're going to have a series of interventions of drainage basins
okay,
that collects these right here, goes to one pipe, and then goes to the city.
okay, you're catching it above.
100%.
Yeah, great.
100%. We are very worried about the liability of. We've looked at this a lot about how people interact on bicycle and foot on the Katy Trail, so we're trying to keep as much water off of that as possible.
So I thought we had some water features, I wasn't thinking.
No, we're not trying to think that in a rain event that you'll have a cascading water flow.
Well, you know, maybe it's not too late. Thank you. All right, very good, that's what I had, thank you. All right.
On this one, is there any pavement work proposed within North Houston Street, or is it just for?
I'm sorry.
Is there any pavement work like this, crosswalks or anything?
So that's part of the Highline projects. Yeah, so everything that is from the curb to the street is already under construction. Yeah, and the project is gonna tie into to that work that's existing, so.
And what was the minimum height that they're considering? Was that driving the height of the road on the plan? Is 9 feet, 10 feet, what is it? You see on
The clear height,
on section 1? the land
Yeah.
is going up. What's that?
the clear height, we maintain at least 9 minimum on the entire area. And that's why actually, if you see this right here,
Backfill and.
Yes,
Yeah.
the clearance that we required from the ramp, to the bottom of the bridge, or more like the structural beam, we're trying to keep clear of, I believe we have even, I think we have 11 in some spots, so.
And then what I was gonna ask is that the design is beautiful. This is very One obvious question that I was asked, which not headed on is, why is the connection coming there? Because if you look at the movement pattern of where people come from, and that's why we decided that it makes sense coming kind of south to give them the ramp versus the other way around.
That's a great question. That's one that we talk a lot about. If you're actually coming the other direction from the American Airlines Center, there's a sidewalk that's on Houston right here. So you can easily take that sidewalk to this area right here. If we look at the traffic, the pedestrian traffic, the biggest use, I think, over the 60 to 70% of it is coming actually from the northern part of the Katy Trail. So when we look at those users, that was important. Also, if we thought about how the future flow of the Katy Trail works, we know that we have a couple miles of trail this way and not going this way. So with the High Line, what we're assuming is that people are going to be coming from the Trinity River up the High Line, taking this and then going up the Katy Trail. That's a great question.
Good question. Any other questions?
I've got just a couple.
Yes.
It's beautiful, I agree. Who maintains this?
So we, the Loop Dallas will have a maintenance agreement with the city for those improvements for 20 years per our development agreements. We did make sure that when we were writing our contract with the city, that there was the ability to assign that to a third party should they agree, because the areas have a lot of ownership from private groups, PIDs, TIFs, I mean, not TIFs, but PIDs, and then there's the Big Three Owners Association, and also the Friends of the Katy Trail. And so we don't know what that final agreement's gonna look like for the assignment, but we do know to stay in the terms of our TIF award, there will at least be a maintenance agreement that the Loop Dallas is engaged in for 20 years. I think that kind of to the bigger question that you're asking, James, is that the way that we are designing this and the way that we are pushing TBG and all of our other designers is that these are public projects. The wear and tear on this is going to be a lot more extreme than it would be on a project that is maintained by a private entity. And so, like a corporate campus, privately held property. And so, we're really pushing these design teams to come up with more sustainable materials, plantings that are drought resistant, that are more adaptive, and also making sure that we don't have features that need to be replaced every few years. And so, this I think is really unique in the way that we're bringing these types of projects in, because the Highline in New York is really beautiful, but their maintenance budget is through the roof.
Yeah.
And so we know that because of the Katy Trail and the Highline project that, we don't have that same, that's not the challenge that we're trying to meet. So, the maintenance on this is going to be less than those other more highly managed projects.
Yeah, I guess my follow-on to that is I assume all your stakeholder meetings have been great. I can see this being heavily used. Regarding funding and maintenance and everything, as long as if they're supporting it and they're willing to help.
Yeah, I think that, and that's one of the things is that we are going to be, as the vegetation palette is finalized, right now SWA group is working with the Katy Trail to come up with a master plan for vegetation along the entire corridor. And we're going to make sure that whatever is planted up at that upper level fits into that palette. And then the other thing is, and this is one of the reasons why we took extra time to go back out and raise the money and bring a design like this, is because the stakeholders in Victory were like, hey, we want to see something that's really elevated, because the private and the city have really invested a lot of money in Victory over the past 20 years. And so they wanted to see something really, really elevated. I think in your packet you have the initial screenshot. I think Laura's looking at it right now. That was the initial thing we kind of had as a placeholder. And one of the owners in the area said, you can't, this is not going to cut it. Like, we need to really push this design. And so we took that to heart. Jeff Ellerman, our board chair, he has said in the past that, that while this is a citywide project, this is the doorstep. This is going to be the thing that the Loop is known for, because, what we're accomplishing with this is urban reuse that Dallas has never seen before. And not even in Texas, because you're taking a Rails to Trails project, the Katy Trail, that has 12 feet of fill below it, and you're now taking that space that is right now dead and unused and turning it into, activating into a new green space. The Katy Trail maintains its activity, but then you now have this plaza that is created below, and that's really special.
Yeah, I think one of the really neat things is creating a pedestrian space at Houston Street, or creating a pedestrian space on the Katy Trail. That's why the pedestrian space on the Katy Trail is pushed back against the hillside, because we're trying to nest that into the natural vegetation right here. One of the original designs, because we call this the Overlook, is that the pedestrian space was going to be out closer to the street up above. And what we realized is that with that design, that way we're really losing that connection to nature. So when we think about plazas and seating and all that stuff, we're trying to push it back to the existing trees, trying to get shade and really trying to, be part of the Katy Trail.
You get a lot of shade.
You do, yeah.
One other question I was just thinking about that, in that portion of, was this a balance of grade versus cost? I'm cautiously optimistic that you are thinking 3% or less for the bridge and the ramps.
Yes, yeah, so,
Like,
so the ramp is under 5, itself, and then the remainder is, we try to stay around like 1.8, for like plaza spaces and things, and then the longitudinal, on the top level, it doesn't ever exceed, 5, it should.
no, I know.
Yeah, it doesn't come in.
Very different. I'm saying that I'm cautiously optimistic that you are not going beyond 3%. And the reason I tell you why I'm saying it, we are spending a lot of money, made something very pretty. So you are obviously watching the money, but at the same time, think about it, like currently, Katy Trail, somebody on the bike, off they go, no problem. Now all of a sudden, if in that pink line, you make them climb up, and then you make them climb down, and it is a 5%, that's a significant grade. I would encourage you, if you have to, anyway, that's a feedback part, but that's why I'm gonna ask that question. So,
We're doing we try to stay within the whole, like around 1.8, so that no matter which direction you go, it's under the 2.
okay, that's-
Our biggest constraint on this project is how do you get people from here down to here? And that ramp, that blue ramp, we've tried to minimize it between 4 to 4.8% on that ramp. So you have
actually, that's not compared to.
No, the top-
same articulation is up on the
the
top.
top Katy Trail.
I go with my skis, walk and watch and then.
And you're right for pointing it out in the fact that it's actually difficult because we have to maintain the clearance below, we have to raise the bridge, and then we have to come back down. And so we have been pushing and pulling, trying to get it as low as possible to avoid that big dip up, basically. So yes, it is, we're totally cognizant and trying to stay within that range.
All right, any other questions before we flip to comments?
And that was a question about the next screen.
So, private, any other comments? Starting with- All right, so we're flipping to the comment stage.
Okay.
All right, who would like to start? Feedback to the design agreement to the.
Well, I guess start from the corner.
Yes.
One, I love it. It's a very challenging space, and I think you created a beautiful supply. I really like it. I have 2 comments. One, I believe you're gonna need to also engage your civil engineer. Family will come out already created, they find it signage. This is why I say that the ramp is kind of one way, right? If you miss it, you're coming down, Katy Trail on the bike. You miss it and you realize that you have to get to walk away and come back. So see if the wayfinding signage can be posted both ways, give them plenty of opportunity to decide, hey, if you wanna go highline, this is the ramp. The good thing is that coming down Katy Trail, this is such a massive space that everybody's gonna see, you can't miss it. But you can miss it right when you are there and the ramp is back there, and then you're trying to go around and stuff. Second thing, I know aesthetically it looks very pleasing, a very hard corner, but I do anticipate people coming north of Katy Trail, trying to make that ramp to go down. So take a look at that, if they can be a little bit more generous radius on that hard corner. I think that was really the one that I was thinking. Everything else was beautiful.
Excellent. Understood?
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Anybody else?
I'll keep going.
Please.
My one comment, Mark, is that access point. And the only reason I say this is, are you familiar with where the Santa Fe Trail and the Black Rock Trail come together, near the dam? It's kind of this merge. So I ride that a lot and I see that I try my best to obey traffic laws, even though I'm on my bike. And I see my friends out there, and they just run stop signs and go. Anticipate that somebody thinks they're gonna ride a Tour de France coming south of them, getting that ramp down.
Yeah.
And, I know it's tough, I don't know what the solution is up in there, but I think forcing that to be a real decision point, maybe making that some kind of a, hey, I did kind of, when I was first looking at this, I was like, wow, I can't budget access points. And, I just know how it's gonna be, and what I would just say, you might wanna make sure that is a very safe, I know Katy Trail can be high speed.
Yeah, and James, it's a great point. We've talked about that a lot. We've talked about how we make sure that we have a 3-foot buffer on each side. So if somebody's coming down, you have refuge to get off in. So point taken, I think we can continue to look and improve that connection point right there.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, that was kind of having that radius, maybe making that somehow a true T.
Yes. You know, the other thing that you see on trails, where they put a bollard up in the middle of it when you start in, that can be dangerous too.
Yes, I'm sure that's, I'm sure you have this, but otherwise, I don't have comments other than I would welcome. Yeah.
There really is no silver bullet for your son wheel. It's not, I know, right, I know exactly what you're talking about. I have done so many times.
Oh, I know.
And I walk the trail with my wire rock every day, you know, it's, you know, you guys.
Yeah.
I'll do it on Saturdays.
Yeah.
Because you know, I leave one about Saturday. Nothing.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. Go observe, the merge of Northwest Highway and Water. The trail comes together there, White Rock Trail. And saw it last night. I was on the bike last night, and the guy with a dog, and he had to stop 2 bikes coming in.
It's not an HTV project.
Yeah. It's well signed. It's a text product, so it's well signed. But it's just what I'm saying.
No, I think it's in one corner.
No, it's stupid. I'm gonna tell my daughter, I said, "So everybody else, they need on the road."
Well, I've noticed, so our first project is open the Trinity Forest Spine Trail off the Santa Fe, and it has an angle that is similar to that. And I was out there in person for the first time watching people go down, and if you're coming from the Santa Fe, from the White Rock Lakeside, nobody was even braking. They were just coming straight through. And so I mean, we were thinking, well, that wasn't this, you know, we need the first thing we were looking at was thinning up the sidelines. So that way people could see, because if they're not gonna slow down, I mean, we should even know what's
That's
happening.
great, that's what I thought about. That's a great issue. You're coming out, same face coming from downtown, where those two come together right here at the dam.
Yeah.
It's a good, sort of similar condition.
Yeah.
It's a near miss.
Yeah. Great point.
Right, safety concerns.
Down there.
And quickly, I think it's lovely. I think it's very thoughtful. And like James, I've done a lot of cycling on the trails. Great place, great part of the world to do that nowadays. But I haven't done it hardly all this summer because of the heat. This makes me want to go ride. Ooh, I'm ready to go ride.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put that in our next newsletter.
That transition from Houston Street also, I like to ride through the end streets and catch Katy Trail and come down and back to downtown and back on the main streets of Dallas, and at that time back up to my White Rock Lake area house, and I know that, you know, this is an exciting development for that. It helps, and I really will think will help with Katy Trail. Katy Trail, one of my favorite trail with that, you don't really know where you are. Yeah, or something. No, this will help pull those together. I think it's great. I'm playing I could, but I can't. It's wonderful.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Yes.
Well, like the others, I'm excited to see this. It's a really beautiful thing to be doing for the city. I can manipulate my way from Katy Trail to the 30 and all that, and this is going to be lovely. However, I actually have some serious problems with it as a pedestrian, because I think if this place really is what we've talked about, the vision of it as a place to gather, we kept using the word respite, but I was actually thinking people use the Katy Trail quite a lot for meeting your friend for coffee, and then you hang out and wait for the friends to show up. And the top area, which is where you want to stand and look down that view, is a little bit like standing on a road. It's very wide, and I looked at the photo, all these 3Ds. It's very wide and it's very flat, and it's pretty undifferentiated. There's a little bit of change in texture along the edge. There's a little bit of difference of texture right along the front edge.
That's some of the structure.
Yeah.
Like this,
Yes.
this texture?
Yes, so right along the edge where you stand.
Oh, yeah, that's. Yeah, two right next to 2 feet on the bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the texture of that one?
It looked like the
Rumble first.
Yeah, that-
It looks like there's a bit of difference in texture, but if I was standing there, especially if I was like, my speaker was probably at the stroller, I'm going to be really scared about the fact that there's a very wide space for bicycles, which is nothing making them slow down. I actually was concerned this to be narrower, there's heights in it to actually make the bicycle realize that they are traffic and that pedestrians have priority.
Do they,
This looks like it's designed for.
do cyclists actually respect that? So I encountered all the
On Katy Trail, if you're on a bike, you have to slow down. There are people there gathering. I just think that we prioritize in this design the cyclists over the pedestrians.
I think that's a really good question. One thing that we've been working with the Katy Trail organization, how many users do they have on the trail?
They had 2 million last year.
They had 2 million last year. They've actually asked this area to be wider than our design. So the bridge actually bows out to 16 feet. I think we go from 12 to 16 feet. 18 feet.
We also want our roads to be wider, because we think making more space for cars is going to make them safer. Actually, squeezing the cars down, making them slow down is better than widening it and making them faster. I'm not just throwing this out there. Maybe
Yeah. I think it's a great comment.
But like, if that texture on the front could be raised up, perhaps, or something like that, that separates a little bit from the base, or maybe even a different material, so that it feels very concrete, big, heavy bridge. It looks like a car could drive along it. Maybe it can, maybe emergency vehicles can, but it does.
Well, and the city of Dallas does require that access vehicles from emergency and a maintenance point can use the Katy Trail. So we do have to look at it from an engineering standpoint.
But the access
Like that.
vehicles on the northern part of the trail, they go on a much narrower trail than this.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
I just think that it feels like a place of prioritizing cars. It does feel like standing in a road.
I think that's a good point.
That brings up a question, because I'm on the Katy Trail, isn't it, that they have the pedestrian only side paths where you walk and then the bikes. Wouldn't that maybe work here, or if you're coming down and fast on your bike, put you on the other side of this feature, because you don't be looking over at the bridge anyway, you're going 35 miles an
All
hour.
the pedestrian part is really lovely with the trees and the climbing up benches and so on, right at the back. Actually, I want to be at the front of my bike and look down. That's true. People looking down over the railing and people and but it feels a bit unprotected out there. Maybe
People gravitate to the edge.
right, I think so. Maybe there could even be some shade if I'm standing out there when it's August. Right along that front, it's like a whole width of road away from the trees, at least, long way away from the trees. And we kind of cheated in the sketches because this art piece is kind of drawn with big things that look like they're providing shade, but I mean, who knows if the art really looks like that.
We don't know what the art looks like right now. Yeah, so that was a placeholder when we were talking to the donor, and that's why you see on these updated ones that they're placeholder cylinders, so we're not too sure yet.
Exactly, so actually, it's very shaded out there on the front, and if I am a pedestrian, I'm wanting to be standing there waiting for my friends.
Actually, with the construction, it won't be shaded. I mean, if you look at the trees that are along the wall right now, those will go away. So in the afternoon in the sun studies that we've done, if you're out on that edge, you will be right in the middle of the sun.
Yeah.
So that's why we pushed that back, was the comfort of trying to be close to nature and being into the shade instead of being exposed out on the edge.
Well, that's exactly what I was thinking, actually, if I'm on the edge, I will be exposed, and wouldn't it be great if there was some kind of shade structure so that I could be out there and be protected.
Well, I think we'll definitely explore the treatment of the bridge itself, because that was, as Mark mentioned, that was a comment that came directly from the Friends of the Katy Trail,
Yes.
that they identify now there, which is, it's been interesting because, you know, Philip Henderson on my board, who was the first president, helped design a lot of those features. And so he was involved in the early concepts of this. The Friends now, they say, well, we see our identity as having two trails parallel, the soft surface and the hard surface, that's what sets them apart from every other trail. And the reason why they feel like that is a necessity is because of capacity. And so, you know, I think that we were hoping to address the capacity issue with the width, like you mentioned. And so, you know, I definitely think we should explore some other opportunities.
I think the one thing, if we break it into two trails, because we looked, it is almost impossible to get ADA access down to the bottom. So, you know, that is one of the reasons that we've gone with this design, is having the wider trail there, not to justify it, but the grading is a substantial piece of how do we get accessible ADA access down to Houston Street.
So then I have another comment as a pedestrian. My vehicle will be not really in my hand, meeting where I'm meeting up 3 or 4 of my friends. I'm stuck there and she has come to the wrong place and she's down below. And I want to get there, and as a pedestrian, especially with the kids in the stroller, I have to now walk all the way up to the end of the ramp, blue ramp, and then kind of manipulating my way around the bicycles, turning the corner, and then come all the way down that curved ramp. I just wonder where there is a little tiny pedestrian stair from the top plaza to the bottom plaza, so that I could just quickly run up and down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if you guys, because it would be nice, I think, to have a stair.
So we actually removed the stair and we got one, but we removed it because of the capacity issue that the Friends of the Katy Trail requested. You know, that they were saying if, you know, they actually wanted us to build a parallel trail, but as Mark mentioned, we couldn't figure out a way to, within that 40 feet of right of way, put in 2 trails that accommodated a soft surface. And so we thought, well, if we expand the bridge width, then that addresses the capacity issue, but we have to get rid of the stair. The stair was actually going to be planned for, you know, back behind the bridge to come down to the plaza directly, like you were requesting earlier, you commented on.
You walk up a little bit of the route, and then you walk right up to the Katy Trail Bridge.
I wonder if there's a way of sneaking it back in. I'm thinking of the shortcuts in the market where you can go where you know, and it's not really a primary route.
Right.
So that you just get through when you don't want to take all the way around Central Market, and you just need to get down there.
Yeah, and one thing that we looked at, and you can see it on the page that James was looking at, I don't remember what, I don't have the packet, so I don't know which one it is, but we have an opportunity that would pass off of the city of Dallas property. It would actually require the use of the Dallas Housing Authority property. And so that's something where we have an opportunity, but that's not within our control yet. That's something that we want to talk with them about and figure out how to make happen. You know, the design that we have right now is one that we know we can build. You know, if everything is done, we could go tomorrow. But ideally, if we had an agreement from THA to use additional property, you know, to make this connection, we have a lot more options then, including stairs.
I was a big wall that is beautifully designed to look like the geology that we showed at the beginning, which referenced in the thickness of that huge retaining wall, sneak a little stair inside it.
Sure.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
About 5 minutes full. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could sneak one. You know, originally when we thought about the stairs would be more grand. They'd act as a sitting place. They would act as a real place, right? Instead of just a back passage through there. As Philip said, as this project has changed through time with the coordination of Katy Trail, you know, that's a component that just got put out. But it's a great idea to talk about how we can relook that.
And we'll be having this talk, because we're gonna at least need a temporary construction easement from DHA, regardless of what the final design is. And so, you know, we're gonna have those conversations with them. We wanted to move through this first to hear your comments, to understand, you know, what the requests would be as we move forward, because, you know, there are different options, and, you know, they have other partners.
that they're on such a steep grade that it's very hard to develop a village. So they would probably be open to giving you 10, 15 feet.
Probably. We don't want to make assumptions. We don't want to make assumptions.
That would be first before you continue doing, finishing your degrees. But then you're gonna be back to, hey, now I got the easement to start over. You're gonna spend a lot of money for us.
Pretty flexible. We know how to do that. And besides, that's working in our house, not me.
Well, odds give, yes, well, it's like, it's a waste of money.
Right, yes, that's a couple more comments.
And then my final comment is just that I think that the nighttime view is really important, and I'm very pleased to see that one with the light on people, we're not to get rid of where light is coming from, but I just want to kind of.
Yeah, we're actually looking at lighting the undercarriage of the bridge, one that shows off the bridge, but also hides the light, and it's coming down on the lower plaza. One of the things that we want people to do is to feel like they're safe and welcome at the lower part, and then we're still working with the lighting designer on the upper part to have the same feel. But it is a place that will be lit at night.
Yeah, but it's great, I just want to put that in the notes, I think that kind of.
Yeah, so the Highline portion, we have, well, I don't know what the total cost is, but now that we just signed another agreement to bring in another $1.3 million worth of lights underneath 35 and the Dart line. And so lighting is a huge portion of making this project successful and safe because, you know, going underneath I-35 or the Dart line is not a welcoming experience, and we are changing that perception. And this is going to be, you know, right a few hundred feet past those underpasses. So,
That's right. So make sure that those are set.
yeah, well, that's where the other part of our budget's going to ALA.
Any other comments from the panel?
I just want to second the stair idea. I don't know where that's going. I'm sure. What I'm thinking about that, but that could double your plaza space, a nice wide stair with Jesse suggested over by the wall. It has seating, has steps, because I do think people will kind of gravitate to that street edge. I'm thinking about your post-concert crowd or, you know, your early morning.
They just walk down there and that's where you have to go pick up.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be there at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, probably. I have a feeling that's going to be really hot unless you have some sort of shade structure. If you do attach it to your bridge, you know, it's going to drive up your structural. But anyway, I love the idea of the stair. So yeah, I think that's a good idea. I'm for that conversation.
True.
Right, guys, we got a lot of good feedback. Just want to wrap it up. First of all, once again, you've heard it. Thank you for doing this work on behalf of the city. Thank you, Luke, for you. And DBG, this is Philip and I were talking just before the second year session started, and this is the kind of work that makes us feel like a grown-up city. So, well done. I too am a user of the trail as well, the Katy Trail, and hundreds of times I know the spot. I know it very well. And when I saw it, your proposal, I said it is brilliant. It's a clever solution. It's sensitive to poverty. It's beautiful to look at. It's an intelligent solution. The way that it negotiates is great. So everything that you have already heard. But I am, just like my colleague question, I am also very concerned with safety. You say you use the word pedestrian. You use the word pedestrian several times. Bicyclists as well as pedestrian. You use the word overlook. Pedestrian overlook. I do again, just like my colleague Jess in particular. I would gravitate if I'm hanging out here. It's unlikely. Maybe I'll be sitting back there, but truly there isn't much to see there. I probably would like to be around here. This is the overlook, not that. Over there is the grass pit area, perhaps. This is the overlook. So there is another spot along the trail, maybe a mile, maybe less than a mile up. And I can't remember what it's called, but the trail, it's a spot off of the trail on the outside of the trail. And it's truly an overlook, a quiet place.
Snyder's beginning.
That's right. It is removed from the trail, and when you're there, you feel safe. I have stopped there more than once. When you take that spot, when you stop on that spot, you feel safe. You feel your body trail of not harm. So it seems that in this diagram, we have but it's the opposite. It's backwards to that other example, that other precedent, the precedent that I'm referring to. Granted, it's a different circumstance, different situation, I understand. However, is there still a way to keep, to design that and add some mitigation element here that would allow this to truly work as the overlook that you want it to be, that we want it to be? So, Jesse mentioned maybe a change in paving, truly clear change in paving, yes, as one of your arrangements described. How about if you're going section, how about dropping a bench along here? A bench that would split the contemplated spot space along the edge from the trail proper, from the bicycles. I don't know. It's something to think of. That's right. So that's something for you guys to consider. I don't know if it makes sense, if there is something that I'm missing, some reason why it couldn't happen. And we also talked more than once, we talked about the artwork, the shading elements. Well, and you have heard, what if you want to be on the edge, you want to really hang out here on the edge, you would like shade. What if we take those elements, the budget, that I know is not part of the project yet, but if you take that money and drop it here instead along the edge, in the form of a trellis, of a long trellis that would, by the way, emulate the language of the railing that you had here. The railing, by the way, is beautiful. So, that's an idea. Why? Because of our concern with safety and to make it truly the way you describe it to be. Overlook, that a trail that is equal, that considers pedestrians and bicyclists, and is an overlook at the same time. So I want to reinforce that point, something that my colleagues have already mentioned. Couple more points. Actually, one more point. There is that image over there. Philip or Mark, could you please bring that poster closer? Yeah, that's so elegant. The way that the bridge is designed here, it appears ethereal, right? It is floating, it's flying above and anchored by the retaining walls that we have on the right and on the left. So I'm wondering, Mark and team, this retaining wall on the left that has the fence on top, this one over here, would we raise that retaining wall a little more and have, instead of having a full fence like this, a sort of fights with the fence above? These are two different languages. Would we raise the retaining wall and have a handrail on top? And that way we would have two truly bold and strong retaining walls, sort of supporting this filigree on top. Right now we have, on the right, straight, we have the embankment and the filigree, but on the left, sort of, doesn't know what it wants to be. Is it it's a bit unclear.
Yeah, it's a great comment. We struggle with that. I appreciate your comment on that. That right now is just matching the existing handrail that's on top of that wall.
Understand.
So we've always been concerned of like making sure that we don't have too many elements in this, but that's a great comment because it's the same element that's below it.
I understand, I know that this is a aesthetic issue, it's not a safety or it's not an issue that raises performance. So it's subjective, it's personal, but I felt of offering the comments to you guys.
We've discussed when we have an elevation really similar to that far right perspective.
Yeah.
We have an elevation that we've drawn in CAD and we've talked about how the whole team has pretty much expressed, we really don't want that railing that is there that you're pointing out. And we've talked about, okay, how can we make it to where we don't need a railing at all so it doesn't distract from that overall view?
Yeah.
So we were talking about manipulating the grade below to where it starts further down instead of all the way full length. And then I think yeah, extending the wall up higher rather than having a full rail, or there's probably a number of solutions to look into, but it's definitely something we agree with.
The only thing that I would say is I do want to make sure if we go that direction, we're very cognizant of the safety on the other side there, because that creates a very blind
Exactly.
side on that sidewalk.
Exactly right, we have to balance, and again, I don't know all the variables here, and that's why I offer my comments with a grain of salt.
I just want to ask a question, because I'm a little confused based on the comments you made. I thought I heard that the bridge is only 12 feet long. Is it 12? What's the structure width?
The existing Katy Trail is 12 feet wide.
No, that,
The overlook,
how wide is it?
It goes up to 18 feet. And that is the request of the Katy Trail because of the 2 million users that they're projecting.
Okay, the reason I'm asking that is because I just want to make sure that I agree with the comment that you're making, that hey, that consider basically creating a separate zone for pedestrians where they can sit, like, kind of segregate the space. If that is the case, I want to make sure that it's wide enough.
right.
I thought it looked like it was maybe 24 feet wide, based on,
That's 18 feet.
Yeah, the total right of way is 40 that they have available to work, and so, you know, I think that if you continue to expand past 18, then you are now creating too much of an overhead for people who are passing it, then it becomes more cave-like.
Right.
You know, we're trying to keep it.
I'm assuming it's all 18, all those structures, you're not really changing the width.
No,
It's 18 will slim down to the standard Katy Trail width.
so where the bridge starts. So this is a complicated project, so these questions are really fun.
Yeah.
Where the bridge starts here.
Yeah.
And the bridge basically starts here. It's 18 feet along that bridge area. It then takes from there and it tapers back down to 12 feet at this point here, and 12 feet to this point right here.
I think the Katy Trail's.
Yeah.
I think it
Yes.
Because this is the only section that, at this point, there was no plans for a second soft surface trail, the Katy Trail. Yeah, that this is the area that they didn't have a plan for that. But their comment was, with this type of feature, the users are gonna be, you know, those 2 million people are gonna now say, oh, this is where I wanna go. And so, you know, how do we think about that future use that's gonna happen, very quickly? Because the other part was the Katy Trail, only 3 years ago, they were only at 1.5 million. And then during COVID, boom, they hit up over 500,000 more within just a couple of years. So, but yeah, I think that I really like these ideas, and I think we'll definitely have to explore that. I think the challenge is if you've been on the Continental Bridge, not the Continental, the Margaret Continental Bridge, the new one, they had the structural challenges. They have a curve that is not very well defined.
Yes.
That separates the bike and pedestrian movements, and I was out with a group and a guy ran his bike into it, broke his wheel, crashed, you know, and because the curb line is not really noticeable, it's marble versus concrete, he just went into it and fell over. So, no, we'll have to make sure these are distinct.
But I think these are all great comments. I mean, we really appreciate your all's comments because we've been looking at this in depth for 6 months. So to get some of these other ideas are always good to reflect.
This is not a very big number. I mean, in London or in New York, that number on a much narrower bike pathway.
We're seeing it drive everywhere else, so that's yeah.
Norman has another one. No, we talked a lot about the overlook. What are we looking at?
Well, the Overlook was the name we gave it back when we first.
The name Overlook, that was what it was.
No, we talked about the overlook and gathering along the edge, and look over and stuff, and I'm looking at this, I think we're looking at this, reaching that into the interstate, I don't know what, right, I'm not gonna hang out there, guys.
Look, so that you're exactly right. That's why this has been pushed to the back and it's off to the side.
Is that it? Okay.
Yeah. So Norm, it's a great question.
If you look at 35.
This view looks at the bridge at 35. One day it'll look at a building that the Wood builds in their master plan. But what we've done with that, which helps, you know, so there you go. That's the thing right there.
I will be drinking my coffee.
But that's why.
Ideas about the High Line that has the overlook that, you know, people, you look at the city street and there's all this movement. I don't think I-35 has quite the same.
But that's also why we didn't set this plaza in dead center.
Yeah.
To the space, we've actually moved it from the center there where an art piece would be off all the way to here, so that seating opportunity in that zone is back in this area.
Yeah, I've come around with that, the seating on the other side of that trail is the place to be, I'm like, I don't know about it.
Let's see. Look at the location, that's black water sitting there.
The bottom right is the exact spot.
Very clear.
Yeah, I do think that this is really gonna change the way that we as a city think about, you know, connections and how we use space. So, that's right.
Final question, comment, are the crosswalks part of the scope of these at all?
No, they're part of the High Line. So the High Line project that's under construction now, it includes these, this is the updated plan. So it includes a pedestrian bar and then a cycling path.
Okay,
And it's all, well, 3 sides of the intersection. So these 3 sides of the intersection are all being improved as part of the High Line project, including the signalization.
so they have been approved, this has been approved, has not been given.
But, so this is under construction.
That's.
Yeah, it's under construction. It's the most advanced technology we have in the city.
It's not really based the whole thing on this.
City would not allow us to do that. Transportation didn't allow.
Okay, so.
They allowed us to median cut through the trail. It goes through Oak Lawn, and median on High Lawn, which is just pretty crazy.
So I asked if it is, I asked and you just said it's has been designed, it's under construction. It seems like a missed opportunity. This is your typical outdoor and street crosswalk intersection, maybe enhanced by X or this or that, but I can't really see. Knowing that this is a special spot, I know Norm, there's much to see today, but, oh, you have some faith, there's much to see special, along the street on the other side. So if we could have something on the ground that reinforces everything that's happening here, you know, something other than, well, straight and, you know, call it a day. What if this becomes, the geometry of this emulates that or references that, you know, as a marker along Houston, right? Is this Houston?
Yes, that's good.
Along Houston, not a generic crosswalk, but something that is unique. Because this is unique. This happens only once. That
Right.
the city.
Yeah.
So, you know, some keys that doesn't have to cost more. It's a matter of geometry over that. I don't know if we have the if we can influence that whatever has been designed, whatever is certain value. So I would encourage you guys to take a look at this.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think that the biggest thing that would help accomplish is some traffic calming on Houston as well, because Houston, even with the High Line project, is still pretty fast.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we're definitely, I think that even from where we were a few years ago, when we first met with their design peer review, and then now that this project's under construction, the city is much more, especially transportation, is much more open to traffic calming and more innovative designs. And so I think that this is going to continue to evolve as the use grows, which will allow us more and more flexibility. Because this gives a lot of traffic engineers, you know, a little bit of hard time. Yeah.
All right. Excellent.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Anything else? Five questions.
Well, I was gonna understand.
Sure.
Which one that's like Poland, which building it looks very tight.
It is very tight, we are working on it, you're exactly right, so not only, you know, we have pushed that bridge as far out as possible within the realm of liability without those traffic light checks.
Yeah.
They're right there, yeah.
City has some ETCs, which are tough to find.
That's the play on, you just jump on there and you slide in.
Thank you, Philip, and Mark, and PVG. Thank you very much.
Great for the recommendation.
Yes, can we have a 5-minute break?
Of course, yes.
And let's have a 5-minute break. It's now 9:47, let me get 9:50 break. Okay.
Yeah. I'm just getting started. You know, I don't like you guys anymore.
All right, Mark, and he's, gets ready for the presentation. Will you please introduce yourself and your yeah. Oh, we haven't done the comments. Yeah.
Okay, 2 pages of comments, only 7 comments though, so Mark, don't feel too bad.
I'm not talking to y'all ever again.
Comment number 1, the panel recommends attention be given to wayfinding signage to help minimize user confusion and facilitate access to and from the Katy Trail. Number 2, the panel recommends additional design thought be given to turning radii as the ramp meets the lower sidewalk level to maximize bike and pedestrian safety. Number 3, the panel advises thought be given to how the Overlook area of the Katy Trail can be modified to prioritize pedestrians and their safety from passing bicyclists by carving out a separate zone, raising certain portions of the trail, differentiation of materials, adding seating, and or shading devices. Number 4, the panel advises the addition of a small stair be considered to provide an alternate way to access the Katy Trail from Houston Street. Number 5, the panel recommends lighting design be prioritized to ensure a safe nighttime environment. Number 6, the panel advises the ramp retaining wall be raised to eliminate the need for a full rail. And the last one, number 7, the panel advises the intersection in front of the Overlook be revised to respond in color, material, and texture to design elements of the Overlook.
If ever possible.
Yeah, that awesome. Yes. Yeah, that one is,
We know it's outside of the store.
permitted under construction.
Right.
Perfect.
Wow. Did Abdul capture all the ones? All the ones? Yes. Great.
Well, I really appreciate it, everybody. Thank y'all so much. I'm looking forward to, getting this project out with, this feedback, so.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you all.
All right, with that, second.
Yes. So, our second project today comes to you as a result of the 2022 RFP process to bring neighborhood serving retail uses to a small city-owned parcel on South Lancaster Boulevard. But even before that, there's a first RFP process that was part of the 1,000 unit housing challenge that the city also put out. Nobody responded to it, so it came back to the city's Office of Economic Development for the second RFP process. So this is a retail project. 3 surface park standalone retail buildings are planned for this site. Key urban design considerations include building placement that addresses the street, encourages pedestrian activity, and design of the parking lot that facilitates mitigation of environmental impacts. I want to now introduce Greg with ETR to provide additional detail and to introduce the design team to walk you through the project.
We get me today for the design team, so thanks everybody. I'm Greg McGahey, ECR Development. We're a Dallas-based retail development firm, and kind of the history of this, as our hero pointed out, was this is a 1.69 acre property in South Dallas in the northwest quadrant of East Lancaster, Lancaster being just east of Lancaster. We're actually at the corner, the northwest corner of Lancaster. It's a small project, and as Arturo said, the city of Dallas had a RFP process they went through. And why we're here primarily is because of one of our tenants, Frostbank's desire to be at this site to service this community. So that's kind of what got the process started. UCR put together a proposal for the RFP and submitted it in October 26th of last year. City Council second. So since then, we've been working in conjunction with the City of Dallas, Economic Development Department, and working through the pursuit of the process of this development, meeting with staff, doing the pre-development meeting, and then secondarily working with the city to identify tenants that would be interested in going into this development. So the RFP really was pretty simple in that I broke it down into two parts. It was about tenant mix, being a retail facility, wanting financial, potentially healthcare, and specifically trying to get some sort of sit-down restaurant in this shopping center. And we're working with a couple of different local guys to try and fill that space. The second thing was design, obviously being wanting that urban design, pulling the buildings from the back of the property, pushing them to the street, creating that street branch, as you can see here, interacting through sidewalks and connecting points to the pedestrian realm. So this site has its challenges. It's a site that outside of the normal constraints of setbacks and drive aisle widths and sidewalk widths and retail depths that retailers desire. The site also narrows from the south to the north about 25 feet as it goes further north. To top it off, we got the survey back, and not only was almost all of the sidewalk along Lancaster in our property or in the property, a good chunk of the road was in the property as well. So what our plans are, and one other thing, there was also, it was identified that there was a 50-foot right-of-way along Corning instead of a 56-foot right-of-way. So in the planning process, our plan is to dedicate back 3 feet along Corning to make up the right-of-way requirement. And then we're going to shift the eastern property line west, inbound, enough to get the roadway into the right of way. So it's going to cause about a 6-foot shift on that eastern property. So taking a very narrow site and narrowing it down even further. So kind of where we are today and why we're here today talking, we are a small scale neighborhood development. We're going to be about 13,500 to 14,200 square feet, depending on who goes into this larger building that ended up on the north end of the property. We're going to, from an interaction standpoint with pedestrians along Lancaster, we've worked with Frost Bank to work the inside of this plan so that we could have windows along the west, north, and eastern elevations. So along the front of the building as it relates to the entrance, along this side of the building, the eastern side. And then as far as the middle building goes, our plan is there, just being a small building, just the nature of retail or the nature of restaurant and how back of house works. Our plan is to these are placeholders, but to incorporate some sort of mural program along the back of the building to help in that interaction, as well as outdoor patios on this side. From the design standpoint of the building, knowing kind of this is a very old neighborhood, it's been around since the 20s, this specific subdivision, but we kind of felt that it was in its boom back in probably the 50s and 60s. So we worked with the architects to try and give some nods to some of the styling that you might have from the 1950s or 60s, but with a modern flair to it. Sticking with a simple palette, probably 3 to 4 materials is the current goal. The 2 buildings on the southern end being small buildings, being pushed up against that pedestrian edge, we're going to work to keep those buildings lower in profile as much as possible. Obviously, we got internal things we have to deal with. Retailers have certain heights and want things of that nature, but we're going to try and keep those buildings a little bit more lower in profile. And then again, back to the pedestrian, incorporating windows and murals, things of that nature to interact with the street. So with all that said, our goal today is, we're to meet the needs of the surrounding community. We're to provide a high quality development that can be placed in South Dallas, North Dallas, uptown, wherever we're at. We want to create a development that's sustainable from the standpoint of parking, sustainable from the standpoint of a depth of space, heights of space, future use of space, and then as with anything, we want to create financially viable development today. So with that, it's a pretty simple project. Not as sexy as the last one you just saw, but happy to answer the questions you might have.
All right, thank you, Greg. So first, any questions for Greg? Done.
That was done.
It is.
Yes. Preliminary has been submitted.
Yes.
So who advised you that you want to give 6 feet off, then cast over 3 off?
Well, the 3 comes from,
Yeah, that's what I thought.
that's a requirement. The 6 feet on that side was too far. I mean, it's really hard to street.
I get it, but that line has been driving the setback, right? The new line.
It is, that's correct.
You can, then, okay, I just want to know the details.
Yeah.
And the curb cuts that you are using, are those all the same? Is that why you're using this?
No, it's more driven by just the layout, this building, we're at 54 feet deep. Typically in retail, we're trying to get to 60 feet. We find that to be the sweet spot, between 50 and 70 feet for retail. And, as you move north, it's narrowing, it's hurting the process. So these were just kind of the natural points where it's one presenting right there today. So this was it's a vacant property today. It's 5 properties. Back in the day, I think it was probably closer to 8 properties or something of that nature. There are a bunch of haircuts on there. We're going to be obviously using 3, but getting rid of probably 4 or 5.
And also, so how do you parking? Is it like right on the money?
It's right on retail and restaurant. I think the parking right now allows for about 2,100 square feet of restaurant, somewhere in that park, and then the rest park.
Okay, oh, there's a dark blue line. How far is that from the property?
The dark, so there's actually a bus stop right here on the corner, and then south, the train line is about 1,000 feet.
So you already take the reduction for approximately $2 another station, like I did 10% reduction
In
in the parking report.
we
Water line?
okay. It's good to know. It's good to know. We will we'll take that under advisement.
And then this is just, I was looking at it, I was just wondering, is that a new trend that the buildings are facing to the inside instead of the outside?
So, let's be honest. Any other comments? Any other questions on the report before we close? Yes, Mark, please.
Go ahead, James. We'll just get on that.
Well, my question was, is Frost asking for a drive-through?
Yeah, they are part of the RFPs to be in drive-throughs, and so they're okay with it for this location.
So there won't be,
It won't have a drive-through. In fact, there is an ATM, but the ATM is interned.
what's your vision, building C?
Building C, it's still up in the air right now. We've got some opportunity to either expand the depth up to 80 feet or reduce it down to 60 feet. It'll either be straight retail. We are talking to a medical provider right now that could come in and take the entirety of the space, which would be great. I think it could be really high quality medical provider. That one's probably a little bit more in flux than the others, but we're working with.
Where are you on the design? You mentioned placeholder for something. real building designs or just?
Yeah, they're real building designs. It's kind of the first iteration of the design. The placeholders I was speaking of was, the architect added a couple of pieces of art on the back as a placeholder for something that would be a mural of some sort.
Okay, and landscape design, has that really been undertaken? I see images, doesn't really match up with the plan, does it?
Correct. We were running these two things concurrently, and it was happening. So the landscape on this side meets the tree spacings and has been looked at by a landscape designer. We are doing 30-foot tree spacings on Lancaster versus 40 years required.
Okay, my question. Is there anything wrong?
Anybody? Yes, Mark. Mark, let's start with Mark.
Phasing on your project, is this all gonna be built as one?
Still up in the air at this point. I believe that these two buildings will get built simultaneously. That's the goal. This building is still a little bit in flux, but our goal is to hopefully have a tenant and be able to do it all at once. It's not a big project. It's 1.6 acres and it's 13,000 square feet. So we would prefer to build it all at once, but that northern building could slip into a second phase.
If the bank and restaurant are only built in the first phase, does all the parking get built with it, or does a certain amount of parking get held off?
So I think that the goal would be to build everything at once except the building.
Okay.
We might not build this row of parking because of just construction, at least of that nature. But that would be our goal, is to go ahead and build it out.
And my other question might be for Arturo, is this part of the corridor plan, or is there anything that controls urban design, or is it just under a regular zoning of the city?
It's in a TIF district, so the TIF district, design guidelines,
Okay.
yeah, those are pulled for.
Okay, and then you did say there is a bus stop,
There is a bus stop today on this corner. We've been
and
communicating.
that will remain.
Think so. We've been communicating with DART, kind of in the early stages of communicating with DART as to how they want to handle that, if it will remain a bus stop or if it will remain, they're going to add some sort of structure there. There is a structure for DART across on the other side of Lancaster.
It's just looking at a street view, it looks like there's two really mature live oak trees where that bus stop is. Do they plan to remain?
We're going to try. We're going to try. That's the goal.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark, Michael.
Yeah, and this may be a question for Arturo as well. I'm just thinking back, looking at some previous raised grants that were awarded in this area that was looking at sidewalks and considering improvements to sidewalks throughout this area. I don't know specifically if along Lancaster Road is included in that. So question on that is if there are any proposed improvements to the sidewalk, I know that's going to be one of your biggest constraints here with that approaching into the property the way it is now. Again, looking at street view, and there's actually a little bit of looks like about 1.5 feet elevation up to another concrete pad. It's really strange.
Yeah.
So just a question about what are the considerations related to the cross section of Lancaster Avenue?
Well, I can answer the sidewalk from a sizing standpoint. We are going to be taking a 5-foot sidewalk and increasing that to a 7-foot sidewalk. What happens in this area here, if it comes down to trying to save those two trees, is yet to be determined. If we'll have to bring that sidewalk inbound, it may tee here and then go back up to the intersection. I don't know. Those trees are very close to the existing sidewalk as it seems today. So again, there's a lot of elements there to those trees that we're going to try and save them. I think it'd be great for the project. From a does it make sense standpoint, it's going to be the difference.
Yeah, I don't know if people can see this, but these are the trees.
Yes. They're mature trees.
Yeah. Any other questions?
No.
Thank you. Jeff, any questions? Okay. questions here. Right, so before we start with points, I should have mentioned this at the beginning, but what you have in front of you is a group of volunteers. We are architects, planners, urban designers, landscape architects, engineers. And what unites us is this desire to make our city a better city. That's all. We have no agenda other than love for that. And we volunteer our time and our expertise to people like you and city, one project at a time. So that's where we come from, just to be here. All right.
As a Dallas resident who lives uptown, I appreciate that.
All right. So with that, I think we can open session for comments and feedback. Who would like to start? Bye. Ready to. Let's start.
That's the only black one. So I have some questions, suggestion, consider it maybe would help. One is that along, because you want to maximize your buildable area. One thing, like I already mentioned, you can consider that parking reduction, I think you'll give some extra square footage possible. Second, you can consider, it's your choice, instead of giving, if it is not a mandatory requirement on Lancaster, instead of giving the right of way, you can give a street easement. What that does is it puts the street, what city wants as part of this development approval, but your setbacks will be then from the original 6 feet, so you can gain about 6 feet on all the buildings. And so, other, from a traffic engineering perspective as well, I do not see a big benefit of you adding that driveway that is along Lancaster closest to the intersection. And this is why I say that. You have about 76 spaces right now. 2 curb cuts are more than enough. I do see a problem with the one space that is on the first curb cut next to building C towards the street. That more than likely, if I were doing it, might not reject it because it is too close to the street as people turn in, and if somebody's there, it backs up traffic on the street, right? So you may lose one spot over there, but you really don't need that driveway that is over there. And if you eliminate that driveway, you'll save a bunch of concrete as well as you'll gain 3 spaces there. There are some other options. I see that you can make some tweaks to increase your parking even more. The layout, especially with the dumpster where it is, it only allows the guy to come in back into the space that goes out, which is fun. But I think you can gain some square footage for development.
I will say that we did want originally the dumpsters to be along the western boundary. We're planning to have a fence along that, separating this development from the alley. We didn't want them to be there, but setbacks, building setbacks, kind of pushed it that.
If you consider the same like that dumpster, you see that hard corner of the parking in the southwest, assuming page face north, true north, like on the building.
Yes, the north is this way.
Yeah, but I'm saying like on the corner of building C.
Right.
The south wall, right there. You can easily carve out a space for a dumpster, but it will allow you a lot more flexibility in the building. You probably gain more spaces there than you will lose in the open.
Yeah, there's a 20-foot setback on that side, building setback. And so in an effort not to have to go get a variance on it, that's why the dumpster is where it is. We would much prefer having it there as well.
Yeah, also because there's a alley there, and then you can figure out a way to use the company take out, use the alley to go out. Sure, but that's it. Otherwise, I don't know.
We'd like to follow twice
Response. James.
on down the line.
Thank you.
Hi. I'm sorry I doodled over your site plan, but my first inclination was to grab all the buildings and bring them together. The reason I was asking the question, I questioned that other curve cut too. I feel like, and you'll probably hear this as a common theme, parking along Lancaster. We really want to change the character, feel, function, Lancaster. You've got a lot of solid residential. It's great for walkable retail. Here, yeah, I just see this as a place to that knows what your restaurants and everything becomes, but I think that this would be a great walkable little retail. And I want to bring it to the street. I want to bring it to the front of the street or along Lancaster so it feels more contiguous. Feels very spaced out. Building C seems separated. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to sound overly negative here, but I want to bring everything together, rather than slide them together. So I do have a little bit, sure to provide that. It's allowable. But, and I asked a question about the drive. Well, the drive-through, you know, just grab building C and I think more long, right? You know, pull it over close to B, connect that with some kind of cave, maybe you have a little positive in between. And if you're thinking long-term, that Frostbank goes away one day, you know, it's easily adaptable uses and it doesn't always look like what we think. You know, the fact that they're not gonna have to drive through, I think that offers a really get rid of that drive, push the parking more back. I would definitely move the dumpster with things like the central feature, you know, you know, I don't know what more I'd add. I'd tree it up more, you know, have more of a tree line boulevard street. And you do have a very walkable transit station. It's very close, so offering shade.
I would say that the original design is always going to be built in design. And I think part of that was driven by Frost's desire to have a kind of freestanding building. Yeah, so that's kind of what drove that. Originally, we had a 3,000 square foot building, we had a 6,900 square foot building in the middle, and then we had a 30 some odd 100 square foot building on the north. And we were thinking, a restaurant would go down here, you'd have some sort of outdoor space, that kind of thing. And they were a lot more connected. Really, what's killing us is the fact that the site is narrow. It's starting to narrow those spaces to a point that they're not as viable to a typical retail user as sustainability. That's really what drove it. But yeah, I love to look at the sketch.
Yeah, I mean, it's just gone over your plan.
Yeah.
Sure. Those are my thoughts. I think it still leaves Frost with so that it's stand alone, but makes the environment around feel much more and less parking. And when I looked at this initially, I just saw parking.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you, James.
Oh,
Sure. Thanks for taking this on.
Sure.
This is a unique part. And talk about looking at some of the written description, and yeah, the idea that it's transit-oriented development. Here we've got, if you think about Dallas, there are very few locations that have such a long length of grade level rail access and other things with businesses right up next to it. A little bit in Fair Park, a little bit in deep, but not really deep element. It goes across all the deep elements. There is another, even the suburb that goes out there. It meets Plano at a 90-degree thing. It's really not you don't have this. It's unusual. And it also makes it an opportunity because you have an underserved, but extremely dense and active part of town. So I think about the context of what we're doing here, both what you have and then what do we want this to be, because you're going to be you're a little bit of a pioneer here. You may get to set the gun center. You get to set it. You can do it better. You're going to show some other people, maybe we have some other stuff. What I see here is not even so much a retail center, but a collection of pad sites. And in one regard, that fits the current context pretty well, because you've got a lot of sort of suburban-like individual developments all along that Lancaster strip there, either side of the thoroughfare. I would suggest that we don't want to reinforce that urban context, that we want to get something a little more interesting, a little bit more together for the pedestrian involvement, and just to read better. Maybe that part of town needs something to look different, to start thinking differently about itself. And so I'm not a big fan of the three building solution. And as an architect, and you're the developer, so you know what to lease, but dividing it into smaller buildings limits your flexibility in terms of tenants. Now you've got a hard sized building here that's got a number of thousand square feet. Whereas if it's one longer building that you can move the vision up some as tenants come forward, maybe it gives you some flexibility. I think a longer, stronger edge to the street would be better. I, like everyone else, am kind of bothered by the lake of parking there in the middle, with the only three-dimensional thing being the dumpster enclosure. I just think that there's, and I also mentioned I also question very much the third curb cut. I'm the five with everybody else. I think the new one next to the bank, I'd take that out, plant it. You've got to have a separate building, but putting cars through there, I think, gives you nothing. In fact, that maybe could be done as a pedestrian link from the street back to because you got the other strange thing on here. I like it that it's closer to the street and not buffered by a bunch of cars. That's good. The traditional way would be to move those buildings to the back and do the parking in front, and that's bad. But now you've got the two-phase building thing, and you got to be. And I love the idea of artwork on the street side to start to give us some interest in things on the street side. But even that, if we're not careful, to me, starts to make it look like it's the back of the building and we got to put something there. I think a great wonderful, but a lot more articulation on the important street side would be good thing. But it just strikes me that a stronger street side statement without huge gaps like that parking lot represents. And if you did have something like that, maybe putting it on an end would be a stronger statement for the neighborhood, better design, and would start to set. And you can articulate, maybe little setbacks, small reduction, change the material. We've done a really good job over here. Excuse my point. I like the play of materials that we have in here. I'm not. I'm just old and cranky. I'm not nuts about simple modern design. It is a 20s neighborhood, and that's not what they would have built really. That have been different. But the play of materials is starting to work for me. I think you can articulate various volumes that way. With minor changes in lease depth without destroying your leasability, give a stronger feel to the street, because that's kind of what this is about anyway. So and then doing something else, you take that and you turn it into, you can narrow it, you can gain some square footage, but have a pedestrian connection to the actual working fronts of your buildings back here, so that the folks can get off the train, or the folks, and there's a lot of folks, there's a lot of pedestrians on lines right here. Make a stronger connection from the street back to the what is in effect the front doors. I think here. I guess that's kind of that's my one for next. There's a sort of basic organization of the site that I question, and I would suggest maybe you continue to look at it unless you got a strong answer to all of that. I would not do the three building solution myself. I guess that's my comment. Thank you. Like
yes, I mean, I think we all see the same issue, which is that it looks like three buildings that happen to be sharing a bit of land, and it doesn't seem like it has a cohesion as a whole. I did exactly the same thing. I got rid of that drive-through between the two buildings on my sketch first thing. I have an alternative vision for how to put them together. I made the assumption that the buildings are stuck where they are, and I started thinking about how to do this as a navigating design. I think the first thing that struck me is that the frontage should be at the front, not at the back. therefore
I'm sorry,
the front should be at the front, not the back. I would kind of taken the back when I first showed you, say the front of this building, and then come to the back of the building. Because parking at the back and the front is at the street, that's just the way it's done. So the front door should be at the front, and you should park and then walk between the buildings on that nice little plaza that it was created, and go in at the front. Or at least you should go in off the plaza, but you definitely shouldn't enter the building from the back, but entering through the kitchen. And then if the front is the front, then obviously there needs to be a sidewalk along the front, which means that you could pull the sidewalk back off the street behind those trees and make a proper sidewalk shaded path that goes all the way through the street along that. There probably needs to be something to join the left hand of the site to the right hand of the site, which would mean that the back sidewalk, the back door sidewalk, which feel like the back sidewalk should carry on all the way from building A down to building C to the dumpster gets moved. That path should have trees on both sides and go marching all the way down through the middle of the parking stadium. So mine at this sketch shows the parking on the street side thought of as an extension of the green space, as if the whole back is grey and the whole front is buildings or green. I've brought this up before, but permeable paving, specific choices of permeable paving would allow you to have that front bit of parking actually feel like it's a plaza, but occasionally you can park on when there's too many people. We all know that those requirements for parking are never filled except on Christmas Eve day. So I'm always in favour of designing a place that you don't really want people to park, so it looks like you shouldn't really park around this. And then you can use that extra space to make a place that actually feels like it's trees and middle, all of that sort of thing. I think, we can all of us verbally design and use sufficient, but I think the kind of general comment is, whether it's with landscape or moving the buildings, to feel like these are the city with the contribution for the site, rather than three buildings with trees.
Thank you, Jesse. Anything else? But
The bus stop, I think, kind of could follow the same story in that it comes in at the front and it could be right. You won't get off the bus and come in front door and back. Come on, go out and walk right through the front. It's kind of a weird thing for me to come.
Actually, when you think about historic context, a lot of times in the early part of the 20th century, an intersection like that with a bank on the corner would have the bank with an angle entrance right on facing that corner.
Yeah.
But those big trees and stuff there, that might be a really good thing. That might be a good use of that sort of thing. Make a statement right on the corner with those trees. Yeah, sort of reads bank, because that's how we used to do it. I'm old.
Yeah. It's always a challenge, when you start trying to get a modern day retailer to accept and think something that's like that. That's the challenge we face in all this.
understand.
I think other comments have been.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not gonna really discuss the site design, the layout, per se. I think the critical item here is how do we address, and not you specifically, how do we address just how dangerous the pedestrian experience is on Lancaster Avenue. I've walked this section from Keast all the way down to 5 Mile Creek, and where there isn't missing sidewalk, it's extremely dangerous. I'm looking at Street View at Corning in Lancaster right here, and I'm looking at a giant truck, which is probably, I don't know, a foot or so away, 6 feet away from one of those giant trees, and the bus stop. I agree with all the comments about, let's talk about fronting the buildings to the street and making it more walkable, pedestrian friendly. I don't know how we do that without really addressing the Lancaster road corridor. And I don't know, at the moment specifically, if this is a street that's been identified for potential road diets. I know with the dark rail in the center median, there's not a lot of flexibility. The only thing I can see when I'm looking at it is, can we lose land? And I don't know, we looked at that on East Boulevard, we looked at that on Hampton, and I know that would be a challenge. But I think it's something that needs to be considered. We're talking about, hey, new development here, it's just wonderful to have development focused in this area. But if we're talking about this being meeting criteria, being street centric, street focused, pedestrian focused, I think we've got to figure out the corridor itself to inform what you're doing, honestly, to allow you the flexibility you need to make this work. I wish I had the solution, but I don't. The one thing that I will say about the curb cut, if you do eliminate that far south curb cut, I think that gives you some flexibility. If you find buildings, shift away from that corner, shift a little further away from the trees, bus stop, maybe that gives a little flexibility to start improving that sidewalk. But if you get towards the center where you have the 2 tiers, I know you're adding an additional 2 feet to make it 7 feet, so that helps. But will that allow you, I guess this is another question, will that allow you to flatten that out and get rid of that?
Then you're talking about that raised.
Right, I think it's that curb inlet right there. Right?
Yeah, it's like a 2 foot or so retaining wall.
Mhm.
I think that's a leftover from bygone eras that I think we're gonna have adequate drop between one end to the other, and we're gonna be able to flatten that out. That's my goal, at least.
Yeah, just to wrap up, I think the thing that's just really a sticking point for me right now is the fact that the sidewalk is basically on the curb line right now. And it's incredibly dangerous, and that's not just on this parcel, that's all the way down, probably further up to the north as well. I'm normally the one that starts talking about the stormwater management features. I don't think that's even worth bringing up at this point. Because I think a lot needs to be figured out on how to move things around and obviously develop a landscape plan. So that's all the comments I have at this point.
Thank you, Michael.
Mark. All right, thank you. It's always fun to be the last one to go because you get to say everything that your colleagues said. But first of all, you started off, you said this is not as sexy as the project that was beforehand. I totally disagree. I want to applaud you. Developing in this area and investing in this area is what the city needs. Projects like the CPC Overlook and things, they're going to get done. This is what's hard to do and very hard to do. So I want to applaud you of thinking about bringing a bank and a sit-down restaurant to this area. It's totally needed. So I would say you're the maker of change. And I would say that responsibility is very, very important for you to carry as you look at this Lancaster district. The Lancaster corridor has always had a idea that it's unsafe. And I think there's a lot of reasons to that, and I think it's the built environment that's around it. A lot of the buildings on Lancaster are back or side of that corridor, and the activity is off the street. So when the activity is off the street, that's where things happen. So as a maker of change, I would really ask you to look at your project in a way where you take that psychology of safety and you bring it to Lancaster Avenue. Instead of putting your front doors in the parking lot that back up to an alley, flip that around. If you look at the great corridors in America and you look at Deep Elm, you look at the Bishop Arts, the front doors are on the street. And I think it's very important for this project. My colleagues, they want 1 building or 2 buildings. I don't care. The biggest thing that I think that we can do here is how do we urbanize Lancaster? do you have the opportunity to bring parallel parking along Lancaster that eats away some of your space? Maybe the city will give you an exception on, building setback that will help with that. How do you bring street trees? How do you bring an 8-foot sidewalk? And then how do you have the front of your buildings that are attached to that? I think that within itself would be a wonderful addition to this neighborhood and start to change this perception of safety within Lancaster. And I do think long-term that would be better for your users, because they'll have better visibility, they have the ability for people to feel safe when they go to the bus stop, to walk in, maybe the bank. I love Norm's idea right there. And, you know, if you look in this area, and if you're around this area enough, there's a lot of pedestrian traffic. You're only 900 feet away from the DART light rail station right there. So I think my biggest comment is, how do we flip this from really sort of almost a suburban context to an urban context? And I know that's really easy for us to say, and you as a developer, that's really hard. But I will say, believe that you're the maker of change in this area, and you hold a lot of weight on your shoulders, because if you don't do that, the next project that comes along will do the exact same thing that happens. So.
Well said, Mark. Right, it seems that you're charged with
Sorry. But it's important, you know.
All by your children.
Yeah. It's up to everybody to do it, and you're just.
And real quick, just to kind of add on to making this a more walkable, accessible space, and I think we've all kind of left this out, but the proximity to Cedar Crest Trail, the need to make improvements along East Boulevard as well. Can we look at what are the strategies that need to happen to make that street from Cedar Creek Trail along East Boulevard to Lancaster, up Lancaster? Yeah, I'm looking at the Lancaster Key Shopping Center here, and in my eyes, what happens to that in 10 years? Does that this intersection become, you know, that urban walkable intersection in Florida, sparks everything out? This becomes a connection to that.
point. So great. It's clear from the comment of the panel that there's a considerable level of discomfort, put it that way. Great that you are backing this, because you seem to have the means, the knowledge, the expertise to do it right, and it's not an easy one, otherwise everybody would be trying to do it. But as you go about it, please consider the comments of the panel. I'm not going to reiterate them all here. I agree with the panelists, my peers. Lancaster is not an easy place to face, but if we keep doing what has been done, best, well, we will never get it. So what if this becomes, what if our project here becomes a seed that starts changing without any penalty to your performance and everything else? Quite the opposite. Maybe what it is slightly different from norm, it could attract more interest. Great that you have already a tenant trail across. Wonderful. Capitalizing that. Cross seems to be, I have seen a couple of their branches around. They seem to take on challenges. They don't seem to go for the usual. They seem to be comfortable with something that is not necessarily the norm. The building in the sea of parking lot. So maybe they will welcome you. Will welcome a slightly different twist on the typical development. Anyway, once again, thank you for taking this on. It's important for the city, important for the asset, but in order for it to be everything it can be, it needs some adjustment. That will go the right. And we look forward to seeing you again.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Yes. I was just gonna read Grace Seven comments, and I'll shoot over these to you. Today. But what I have written down here so far, number one is the panel recommends exploring the city's parking reduction and using the platting and easement process to help gain buildable square footage. The panel advises, number two, the panel advises further design of the parking lot, elimination of the driveway closest to South Lancaster and the South Lancaster intersection be considered to gain parking spots and opportunities for additional landscaping. Number three, the panel believes the character of South Lancaster can be improved by bringing the buildings together and up to South Lancaster, moving all the parking to the back and adding formal pattern of street trees, a formal street tree pattern. Number four, the panel recommends more thought be given to how the project can help set the tone for future development along Lancaster, one that is not so suburban in nature, along with articulated urban building frontage without large gaps and back of house frontage can reinforce a more walkable and transit served development. Number five, the panel advises the front doors to buildings be located along the street or off a landscape plaza to bring activity to South Lancaster and capitalize on DART and bus rail station proximity and the nearby Cedar Crest Trail. Number six, the panel recommends permeable paving strategies for parking along closest to South Lancaster and a landscape shaded pedestrian pathway connecting all three buildings be provided. And lastly, number seven, the panel advises the pedestrian experience along South Lancaster needs to be designed to allow some breathing room for a safer pedestrian sidewalk zone, and perhaps the addition of parallel parking, a parallel parking scenario on South Lancaster can be explored.
So I could have something, but I don't know if James' suggestion, recommendation be a sketch that he had. I don't know if we capture that in the comments and could go along lines of a suggestion that UCR revisit the layout between. Is that?
Yeah, I can word that differently. That was number three. The panel believes the character of South Lancaster could be improved by bringing the buildings together and up to South Lancaster, moving all the parking to the rear.
Okay, all right.
But all of these can be kind of massaged a little bit.
Yeah,
I just forwarded mine too.
yeah, great.
Thank you.
And did there to capture everything on the panel? Yes. Right? Is it clear? That's great.
Thank you.
It's clear. Thank you. Feel like I'm stacking architecture. Yeah. It's very a lot Super.
All right. So and we'll see everybody next time.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah.